Today I'm going to talk about modals of ability, be able to. We're going to focus on be able to. Please remember that there are three modals of ability: can, able to, and could. Before we start, let me review some of the modal rules. The first modal rule is to put the modal before the verb, so he can speak English. The second one is to change the verb into the base form, so she can have a car. We don't use has. The third modal rule is to change the auxiliary into the base form. So he may be driving instead of is. Okay. And the fourth one is to put not after the verb. So she could not drive. Okay. Not negation occurs after the modal. After the modal, excuse me. So we're looking at be able to. Let's look at the form right now. Okay. We're going to talk about past and present statements for be able to. This part will be a little bit of a review. So if you want to skip ahead, go ahead. So the be auxiliary, we're looking at noun and verb agreement for the present. He is able to surf. She is able to surf. They are able to surf. I am able to surf. You are able to surf. It is able to surf. My parents are able to surf. My mom is able to surf. That's the be auxiliary. That's noun and verb agreement for the be auxiliary in the present. Let's look at the be auxiliary noun and verb agreement for the be auxiliary in the past. Just gonna list these off very quickly. You can skip ahead if you wish. He was able to surf. She was able to surf. They were able to surf. I was able to surf. You were able to surf. It was able to surf. My parents were able to surf. My mom was able to surf. So what I want to be reviewing this, I want to mention that the be auxiliary, the noun and verb agreement rules for the past and present for the be auxiliary are the same when we are talking about be able to or be going to in any instance. But let's move on. So let's talk about positive and negative statements with be able to. If we make a positive statement, he is able to leave his room. If we want to contract that statement, the contraction occurs between the auxiliary, the be auxiliary, and the noun. So he's able to leave his room. If we want to add negation, remember that negation always occurs after the modal, or in this case, after the be auxiliary. So negation comes after the be auxiliary. He is not able to leave his room. And if we want to contract that negation, the contraction occurs between the be auxiliary and not. So he isn't able to leave his room. Let's move on and look at an example. They are able to swim across the bay. The contracted statement. They are able to swim across the bay. Okay, remember, contraction occurs between the noun and the be auxiliary. If we want to negate, they are not able to swim across the bay. Negation comes after the be auxiliary. And if we want to contract that negation, they aren't able to swim across the bay. The contraction occurs between the be auxiliary and not. Moving forward, let's talk about the past tense. There's one big exception in the past tense is that when making positive and negative statements for the past tense, there is no contracted form. We cannot contract was and the noun. Okay, so she was able to write in Chinese will always be she was able. We cannot contract it. But we can add negation to it, and remember the negation comes after the be auxiliary. So she was not able to write in Chinese, and we can write a contracted negation. Contracted negation occurs between was and not, so she wasn't able to write in Chinese. Let's move forward with question formation for past and present with be able to. Okay, so if we're looking at a question, she is at a statement, excuse me, she is able to speak in Chinese. If we write a yes no question, please remember that to move the be auxiliary before the noun. So we take is and we place it before the noun she. Is she able to speak Chinese? If we want to write a WH question, we just add a WH question word. Why is she able to speak Chinese? And with WH words, some WH words are who, what, where, when, why, and how. And let's look at an example. They were able to go shopping. Yes, no question. We move the be auxiliary to the front of the question. Were they able to go shopping? If we write a WH question word, we add a WH question word. Where were they able to go shopping? Okay. Moving forward, let's write some positive and negative statements We're going to be looking at positive and negative statements with will be able to, the future form of be able to. Okay, so statement, he will be able to leave his room. If we want to contract the statement, remember that the contraction occurs between will and the noun. He'll be able to leave his room. If we want to add negation, remember that the negation comes after will. So he will not be able to leave his room. And if we want to contract that negation, the contraction occurs between will and not. He won't be able to leave his room. Moving forward, let's look at an example. They will be able to swim across the bay. The contracted statement, they'll be able to swim across the bay. The negation, they will not be able to swim across the bay. And the contracted negation, they won't be able to swim across the bay. Okay? Moving forward. Let's look at question formation with will be able to. Okay? If we make a statement, she will be able to speak Chinese. If we make a yes no question, we move will, okay, before the noun. Will she be able to speak Chinese? And if we make a WH question word, we just add a WH question word. If we want to make a WH question, we just add WH question word. So, why will she be able to speak Chinese? WH words are who, what, where, when, why, and how. Moving forward, let's look at an example. A statement. They will be able to go shopping. The yes/no question. Remember to move will to the front of the question. Will they be able to go shopping? We have another WH question. We want to make a WH question. Remember to add a WH question word. So where will they be able to go shopping? Okay. Now we're going to talk about the uses. This is probably the most important part. We're going to be looking at the uses for be able to, can, and could, but we're focusing on able to and what can and could cannot do. So here's a chapter summary very quickly. Be able to can be used for future possibilities, future abilities, can be used for future abilities. It can be used with possibility, so is probably able to. It can be used with want to, would like to, need to, have to. And it can be used for specific past accomplishments. Be able to and can be used for general present ability and for sense and mental ability. And be able and could can be used for general past abilities and for negative statements about the past. Okay, so let's look at some examples very quickly. So we can use be able to talk and write about abilities in the past, in the present, and the future. For example, past, he was able to solve math problems. Present, he is able to solve math problems. And future, he will be able to solve math problems. Okay. Something to note is that we cannot use can and could. Note, can or could have no future use. Okay. We can use can for the present. Okay, he can solve math problems, or he is able to solve math problems. And we can use could for the past. He was able to solve math problems. He could solve math problems. Okay, if we're just talking about general abilities, that's possible. We can also use be able to talk and write about possibilities. For example, if we want to write about less certain possibilities, okay, he will possibly be able to solve math problems. If we want to write about certain possibilities, he is likely able to solve math problems. And if we want to write about more certain possibilities, he was certainly able to solve math problems. Please note that the possibly, likely, and certainly usually come after the will or the be auxiliary. And I say usually. Let's move forward. If we want to use be able to, we can use be able to talk and write about specific past accomplishments. This is specific past accomplishment. So for example, in the past, Einstein, he was able to solve the general theory of relativity. Okay, so we can use be able to talk about specific past accomplishments. The exception, we cannot use could to talk about specific past accomplishments. Okay, so Note, use could for general past abilities, but not specific past accomplishments, okay? So we only use able to for specific past accomplishments. We use be able to. We can use be able to with want to, would like to, need to, and have to. For example, he wants to be able to surf. He would like to be able to surf. He needs to be able to surf. He has to be able to surf. The exception. We cannot use wants to. We cannot use can or could with wants to, would like to, need to, and have to, okay? So don't use can or could with want to, would like to, need to, or have to, okay? So that, just to quickly summarize, use be able to for future abilities. Possibilities is probably able to, such as is probably able to. We can use be able to with want to, would like to, need to, have to. Want to be able to, would like to be able to, need to be able to, have to be able to. And for specific past accomplishments. Example, he was able to solve the general theory of relativity. Be able to and can be used for general and present abilities, general present abilities, and for sense and mental abilities. We can use be able to and could to talk about general past abilities or make negative statements about the past. This concludes this. I hope that you enjoyed it, and please have a wonderful day.